Talk to me about what it means to you that your oil production has peaked, that your carbon emissions peaked the year before, I think, in 2018, right?
Well, that's right, Matt, and thank you very much for having me on the program. Yeah, absolutely. We see indeed that we need to transition, which means that indeed we're going to put more emphasis on those parts of the energy system where we believe the future is. We're going to put more emphasis, therefore, also on working from the customer back, because we believe most of the opportunities in the energy transition, most of the value, if you like, is going to be serving customers as they need to find their way to net zero. So we have a whole set of plans that we're going to talk about today. We have a vision for 2050, but a pretty clear plan for the next decade, what it will take to indeed transition our company, not necessarily completely away from oil and gas, but definitely more towards these energy systems of the future.
And let's, good morning to you, Ben. Let's talk about the plans that lie ahead and the transition and where the future of the business is. I don't think you've increased the amount of money you're going to spend on renewables today. Does that remain at 2 to 3 billion a year? Why have you not given a new figure for that, or correct me if I've misunderstood?
No, good morning, Anna. And we believe the energy transition is not so much how much money you can put into assets that make sort of commodity green products. It is much more about how you serve customers as they need to transition. So the ambitions that we set and the sort of milestones that we are going to talk about today is very much things like we will be serving 15 million customers with power, twice as much as we sell today, 50, 60 terawatt hours a year, which is roughly the same as Germany. We have 10% of low carbon fuels in the energy mix. We're going to increase the number of charge points from 60,000 today to 500,000 by the middle of the decade, and 2.5 million by the end of the decade. More hydrogen, double-digit market share. We are the leading player already, and helping customers with offsets as well as carbon capture as a service. So we believe that story of the future of energy is a story that is going to be told around creating value with customers, not by building assets that produce commodity green electricity.
I see this morning that the Church of England Fund and Rebecca have both welcomed the strategy that you've set out this morning, but not all your shareholders are maybe cut from the same cloth, and we saw that the moves around the dividend were not well received by some investors previously. So how are you managing to keep all of these disparate groups, perhaps, of investors, if that's what they still are, together?
Well, that's a very good question, Anna, and there's a number of things that we have to get right. So, first of all, we have to make sure that as we transition into this new future, that people really understand there is superior value to be harvested. And we're going to talk about that a lot today, that we are going to have a very disciplined approach, how we invest and how we access that, shall we say, value pool of the future. But at the same time, we're not going to immediately turn our back on our legacy businesses. As a matter of fact, we're going to use our upstream business very much as a high-quality financial foundation of the company that is going to pay a very significant part of shareholder distributions well into the next decade. That is going to help us fund that transition into the future of energy as well. And also in areas like LNG, in chemicals, we are going to grow and significantly take advantage of the opportunities there as well. So our story is a story of you will have value with us today, but we're also building the value of the company of the future. And therefore, I think it is a balanced narrative based on a very disciplined approach that we will be laying out today. Disciplined in cash management, disciplined in carbon management.
What do you expect to see with the oil price? It's risen pretty quickly. Brent crude has above $61 a barrel. What's your expectation for year end?
Well, I don't have a specific year-end expectation, Matt. As I said many times before, it will only look silly when we get to year-end. I do believe there is going to be a bit of volatility in the oil price in the near term because of many factors that you can all guess at. But in the longer term and in the medium term, I think we are going to see more upside potential than downside potential. The sector has significantly underinvested for some time now. We see that OPEC and OPEC Plus are prepared to play a very disciplined role. And we don't see necessarily the demand for oil and gas collapse so fast that it actually outpaces the rate with which supply shrinks every year. So I think in the midterm, we're going to see a healthy environment for oil and gas, and we're going to benefit from that healthy environment. The point is, though, even if a new super cycle would come, we're not going to invest into that super cycle. We're going to enjoy that super cycle, and we are going to make sure that the proceeds of that super cycle go towards building the company of the future, which, as I said, is a customer-backed formula.
OK, and you want to invest in a different type of business then. I hear what you're saying about not building new assets. It's all about serving the customer, Ben. But does that eventually mean investing and buying up other renewable assets? Because some other energy companies are going after buying renewable assets. The prices of those is on the rise. Is that a game you're not playing?
Well, I think I'm not ruling out in the long term that indeed inorganic activity is going to be part of the narrative. But of course, at this point in time, it is very much building up these market positions. So maybe indeed building up customer portfolios, if you like. And we are not abstaining from investing in assets. As a matter of fact, we will invest in assets to access these customers. We, by the way, will also invest, of course, in generating assets. But we tend to do that with other partners to make our money go further. And secondly, we see it as an enabler for delivering the electrons that will help us serve customers. But we will continue to invest in upstream, in chemicals. We will grow our chemicals business probably with 30%. We will invest in LNG. We will grow our LNG business with 7 million tons per annum by the middle of the decade. So it's not as if we take an investment holiday, but it will be a much more balanced approach, and an approach indeed that goes to the more capital light side of the spectrum.
So you'll continue to, so the electric charging will be a focus. You're going to continue to grow your LNG business. What about hydrogen? Yesterday we talked a lot about the first hydrogen ETF. Is that a fuel that you're going to continue to provide more and more of?
Absolutely, Matt. I think we can claim that we are a leading player, if not the leading player, when it comes to hydrogen for mobility. But of course, it is a minuscule market at the moment. We've been working at it for about 25 years, but it hasn't really taken off yet. We think it is at the inflection point where it will take off, and where indeed hydrogen for heavy goods mobility, maybe also hydrogen for shipping, hydrogen playing a role later on in aviation, is going to be something very significant. And again, I think we are well placed. We again have a massive footprint when it comes to serving heavy duty goods vehicles. I think we have a really good position to integrate hydrogen manufacturing in our growing power positions. We're going to talk about it a little bit more today as well. And we believe that in the end, the hydrogen business has similar characteristics as the LNG business. And we are the leading player in LNG, and we want to basically replicate some of that journey for hydrogen, initially at a smaller scale, but eventually a business that can rival our LNG business.
Ben, we're talking about various different energy assets. Let me ask you about wind, offshore wind. Do you think that is still competitive, or is that not a focus?
No, offshore wind is a very important component in our portfolio. As a matter of fact, we are, of course, starting up at this point in time another large wind farm in the North Sea. We are constructing another large wind farm in the North Sea as we speak. And that wind farm, by the way, will serve major customers, anchor customers like Amazon. It may also serve some of our own demand, but it may also serve, for instance, building out that hydrogen infrastructure that we were just talking about. But we believe that investing in wind farms just to provide electricity into a commodity market with merchant pricing mechanisms is not the recipe for success. You have to look at the integrated value of electricity into the end users. And that's how you get to compelling returns that we are going to talk about today.